May 2013. The humid air enveloped the forest along the Catawba River, about 20 miles from downtown Charlotte, North Carolina. Light from police car headlights cut through the thin fog, shining on the muddy ground where investigators were hunched around a freshly dug pit. Central, I need the forensics team and crime scene investigators to the South Catawba area immediately. Investigator Sarah Collins' voice crackled over the radio, firm but choking at the end of the sentence. What started as a routine survey to verify footage from an old Super 8 film had turned into something entirely different. Something that could answer questions that had haunted Charlotte for nearly 40 years. Beneath the damp red soil, the forensics team uncovered human bone fragments, and right beside them was a small silver necklace engraved with the initials CH. The necklace mentioned in the missing persons file of Charlotte Hanley, the woman who vanished without a trace in the fall of 1974. For nearly 4 decades, Charlotte Hanley's disappearance was just lines in old police files stored in an archive cabinet. She was an elementary school teacher, 26 years old, who left school after a late parent-teacher meeting and never made it home. 2 days later, her silver Plymouth Satellite was found on the edge of the forest south of the city. Doors locked, purse intact, but around the car were men's shoe prints and strange tire tracks. No body, no witnesses, no explanation. Her family fell apart. Neighbors stopped talking. Suspicion crept through the small Charlotte community. And then, like many missing persons cases, the file was closed in 1975, with the cold conclusion, missing, presumed dead. Before continuing this shocking story, take a second to hit subscribe and like this video. Your support helps bring forgotten cases back into the light, and helps us keep telling the stories that justice has overlooked for too long. The discovery by the Catawba River was not just the end of a missing persons case. It was the first domino in a chain of events that would expose secrets buried beneath Charlotte for nearly 40 years. Because as authorities traced the evidence, they uncovered something even more horrifying. A Super 8 film shot in 1974, showing 3 men loading large sacks onto a white van near the edge of the forest. In a frame lasting less than a second, a woman's hand dangled from the mouth of a sack. 2 of the 3 men in the footage were identified: Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes, former employees of Michael Hanley, Charlotte's husband. Both died in 1975 in a mysterious drowning in Louisiana. The remaining man in the film, his face clear, unmistakable, was Michael Hanley himself. The man who once cried on television, begging police to bring my wife back. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the answer was always right in front of everyone. Michael Hanley was interviewed in the initial investigation, but never prosecuted. For decades, he attended memorials for his wife, shook hands with neighbors, donated to missing persons funds, and maintained the facade of a grieving husband while hiding a secret no one dared imagine. The Charlotte Hanley case is not just a mystery solved. It is proof of the persistence of investigators who refuse to let files gather dust, of the leaps in forensic science, and of justice that even when delayed, it finds a way back. Tonight, we will return to Charlotte in 1974, trace Charlotte Hanley's final steps, and witness the nearly 40-year journey that brought the truth back to light. This is a story of loss, deception, perseverance, and ultimately justice delayed, but never denied. Charlotte, North Carolina, fall of 1974. The city still had the feel of a slow-paced, southern urban area, where narrow streets were shaded by oak trees, low porches, and the familiar sound of night trains echoing from afar. Life for residents unfolded steadily, peacefully, with little upheaval. In the quiet Dilworth neighborhood, Charlotte Hanley, 26 years old, was a beloved elementary school teacher. She lived with her husband Michael Hanley, a prominent businessman running a recently expanded private rehab facility on the southern outskirts of the city. Their family was stable middle class, seen as exemplary, a young woman devoted to teaching, and a successful husband, always impeccably dressed at community fundraisers. That evening, Charlotte attended the end-of-term parent-teacher meeting at school. The weather turned cold earlier than usual, wind blowing through the stone-tiled hallways, carrying the smell of rain and damp leaves. When the meeting ended, she organized her gradebook, put the files in her leather bag, and left the building. Some colleagues, still in the teacher's lounge, remembered her waving goodbye, saying she would stop by the small store near home before heading back. Outside, weak yellow lights shone on the sparsely parked cars. Charlotte drove her familiar silver Plymouth Satellite, slowly leaving the school grounds. The road she took ran along thick tree lines, then connected to South Tryon, leading to the residential area where she and her husband lived. It was a short, familiar route, usually taking just 15 minutes. A few neighbors later said they saw Charlotte's car pass through the neighborhood that evening, recognizing her behind the wheel, her blonde hair tied low and a light-colored coat on the passenger seat. When night fully fell, the Hanley porch light was still on, the living room wall clock nearing 10. Michael called the school, then went to a few of his wife's friends' houses, but no one knew where she was. He drove around Dilworth and the connecting route home, hoping to spot her car on the road, but to no avail. By midnight, the family began to fear something terrible had happened. Charlotte had no habit of going far, let alone leaving without notice. When further calls went unanswered, they had no choice but to contact the Charlotte-Mecklenburg police, reporting the young teacher Charlotte Hanley missing that night. The call was logged in the early morning hours, marking the official opening of the missing persons file. In the police station's duty room, the first report was drafted with basic information about the victim's identity, occupation, vehicle, and residence. The morning shift, led by Lieutenant Harold Whitlock, took the case and requested 2 officers to go to the Hanley home for verification. The small house in Dilworth was still lit, showing the family had stayed up all night waiting for news. Michael Hanley greeted them exhausted, confirming his wife left the elementary school early in the evening and should have been home before 9. He said he had searched the neighborhood himself, driving the route between school and home, but saw nothing. The officers asked about family relationships, close friends, and places Charlotte might have stopped, but the answers yielded no leads. In the notes, police recorded that Charlotte had no luggage, cash, or ID with her. Her purse and light coat were still at home, indicating she intended to be out only briefly. Lieutenant Whitlock requested the most recent photo of the victim for internal distribution, while contacting area hospitals in Charlotte to check for accidents or emergency admissions. The morning sweep showed no patients matching the description. At the same time, the station's administrative department called late open hotels, motels, and gas stations around Dilworth and South Tryon, but received no notable responses. By noon, police decided to expand the search. 2 patrol units were dispatched to check the route Charlotte usually took from school to home, scanning public stops and the sparse forest areas south of the city. These locations included empty lots, old parking areas, and rarely used roads. Police also sent notices to neighboring counties for assistance in case Charlotte left the city limits. All information was compiled and sent to the command center, but the results were 0. No witnesses, no traces, no vehicle signals. The last call from the Hanley home phone was confirmed early the previous evening when Michael called his wife. After that, no further contact, and no outgoing calls from Charlotte's number. Lieutenant Whitlock's interim report to superiors stated, "No evidence the victim left voluntarily. Continue search in expanded area." That afternoon, a brief meeting was held at the station to reassess the situation. Officers agreed the time without contact was too long for a typical missing persons case. Per internal guidelines, Whitlock proposed classifying it as an unusual disappearance and transferring the file to the Criminal Investigation Unit for follow-up. An internal alert was issued across Mecklenburg County with a specific description of the victim, female, 26 years old, blonde hair, about 5'5", driving a silver Plymouth Satellite, last seen leaving Dilworth Elementary School the previous evening. This information was also sent to the federal system for coordination. By the end of the day, the search still yielded nothing. The summary report noted briefly, no witnesses, no physical evidence, No signs of voluntary departure from residents. Current status, unusual disappearance. After submitting the report, Lieutenant Harold Whitlock had the duty units pause, sweeping for the night to prepare for a larger-scale search the next morning. Outside, patrol cars moved quietly through the neighborhood, red and blue lights reflecting on the dew-wet pavement. The whole city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for any small sign of Charlotte Hanley's whereabouts. The next morning, the official search was launched on a larger scale. Early on, Lieutenant Harold Whitlock gathered all duty personnel, mobilizing additional Mecklenburg County volunteer rescue forces and a K-9 unit for support. Topographic maps were spread on the desk in the temporary command office, circling the area between Dilworth Elementary School and the neighborhood where Charlotte lived. Police determined this was a short route with few stops, but many small turnoffs leading to forest and southern suburban areas. Many volunteers joined, divided into small groups with flashlights, radios, and notepads. They began searching along both sides of the road, in empty lots, ditches, and rarely used turnoffs. The day was overcast, light drizzle reducing visibility, the ground wet and mud, covering the small paths into the forest. The rescue team moved slowly, noting any unusual objects that could relate to the disappearance. By mid-morning, the search expanded 5 miles south. Another police unit scanned the route to I-77 highway, but found no traces. They only found a few fresh tire tracks in the mud, but not enough details to identify the vehicle type. As the clock neared noon, a group of volunteers spotted a shiny metal object peeking through thick tree cover in the forest along the suburban road. Approaching, they realized it was the rear of a car, partially obscured by low bushes. The license plate matched the registration police had received from the Hanley family. The information was immediately reported to command. Within 10 minutes, the area was sealed. Civilians asked to leave the scene. The criminal investigation team arrived shortly after to take over. Charlotte's silver Plymouth Satellite lay tilted to one side. The right front wheel sunk in soft mud. Doors closed, no signs of collision or forced entry. Officers set up temporary barriers, marking the area with yellow tape. Around the car, the ground showed multiple shoe prints and a second set of tire tracks running parallel, extending toward a small dirt road deeper into the forest. A team of technicians documented, photographing the entire area before any evidence was moved. All were instructed to limit entry to preserve traces. Under the pale noon light, every small detail was checked. Tire skid marks, steering wheel direction, mud on the undercarriage and broken grass underfoot. Some officers were assigned to draft a preliminary map, measuring distances from the car to the main road, marking relative positions of each shoe and tire print. After over an hour of surveying, the scene was determined likely the last place Charlotte Hanley appeared. Lieutenant Whitlock reported to the station, requesting an additional forensics team to collect evidence. All search activities within a 2-mile radius of the forest were paused to preserve the scene. Remaining volunteers were assigned to monitor the outer perimeter, preventing curious civilians from entering the sealed area. The atmosphere in the forest grew heavy, silence enveloping as yellow tape stretched between tree trunks. After securing the area, the investigation team began the initial steps of crime scene processing, recording all data for subsequent analysis. By early afternoon, the crime scene investigators completed mapping and handed the area over to the specialized forensics team. From afar, the sound of specialized vehicle engines echoed in the quiet space. The forensics team arrived at the scene, bringing photography equipment, sampling tools, and sealing bags. The area around the Plymouth Satellite was divided into 3 inspection zones: the vehicle interior, the ground contact area, and a 10-meter radius around it. Every movement was recorded in the log to ensure the evidence handling sequence. Before opening the car door, technicians photographed the full scene from 4 angles, marking the exact positions of the wheels on the mud. The driver's side door was opened using specialized gloves. Inside, The seats were intact, windows fully rolled up, no signs of prying. On the passenger seat was Charlotte's purse, containing her wallet, Idaho gradebook, and a few small items. The glove compartment held a box of chalk, a pack of tissues, nothing unusual. The back seat had a neatly folded coat, no signs of struggle or disturbance. The steering wheel and dashboard had no new scratches. Everything indicated the driver stopped intentionally, not due to an accident. Outside, investigators examined the mud around the tires. The right tire was sunk deeper than the left, showing the car stopped in a slight skid, possibly from a sharp turn. The second set of tire tracks, deeper and clearer, extended nearly 5 meters toward the small trail leading into the forest. The tire type did not match the victim's car. The pattern was thicker, characteristic of a truck or van. A series of close-up photos were taken for later comparison. Near the rear of the car, technicians found 3 shoe prints pointing outward, significantly larger than women's shoes. The prints were clear in the damp mud, deep sole grooves, likely men's shoes. A soil sample around the prints was taken to analyze mud type and moisture, determining formation time. About 2 meters from that spot, a small gray fabric piece was discovered, mud-stained at the edge. The fabric had synthetic weave, folded into a sealing bag, along with a short light blonde hair stuck to the right rear door. Under the exterior door handle, a small dark streak was found. On-site testing indicated possible blood. The sample was taken with a sterile swab, sealed separately. In the scene report, the forensics team detailed the collected evidence: 3 soil samples, 2 fabric samples, 1 hair sample, biological trace suspected as blood, photos of tire and shoe prints. The summary description preliminarily concluded, no signs of collision or mechanical damage on the car, ruling out accident. Doors closed, locks undamaged, indicating the driver actively stopped and left the vehicle. However, surrounding traces suggested the presence of at least one other person at the time. The appearance of different tire tracks and men's shoe prints near the car led investigators to suspect Charlotte was forced to leave the vehicle, possibly by force or under threat. The preliminary report was signed by Lieutenant Whitlock with the note "possible abduction, pending analysis." All samples were sealed and transferred to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Crime Lab for detailed analysis in the following days. Immediately after completing the scene examination, Lieutenant Harold Whitlock directed the investigation team to expand the sweep to adjacent areas. The task was divided between 2 units, one collecting statements from residents along the road where the car was found, the other checking side turnoffs leading to the forest. Over 2 days, police knocked on every door in the southern Charlotte suburbs, where population density was low and small farms interspersed. Most residents said they saw nothing unusual the night of the incident, but a few witnesses provided notable details. A man living on a farm across the road said he saw a white van parked several dozen meters from the forest between early evening and before midnight. He didn't see anyone in the van but remembered the rear door was slightly open and the interior light turned on for a few seconds before going off. Another woman, owner of a nearby small store, confirmed seeing a similar van driving slowly along the main road that day, without lights as dusk fell. The 2 statements were recorded, matching in vehicle description: a Ford Econoline or similar commercial van, no markings, plain white paint. The investigation team compiled a list of all vans registered in Mecklenburg during the incident month. Records from the Vehicle Management Office showed 12 Ford Econolines operating in the area, mostly owned by small transport businesses. The owners were invited to provide statements, while police checked registration status, rental history, and maintenance reports for each vehicle. During the sweep, an administrative clerk noted that a white Ford Econoline had been temporarily rented from a downtown Charlotte rental agency just days before the disappearance. The renter was Michael Hanley, address matching the victim's husband. The data listed rental date, return date, and license plate. The invoice was reprinted and immediately sent to Whitlock's desk. He requested verification with the rental agency, and staff there confirmed Hanley personally signed the contract paid cash, rented for 3 days, returned on time. When asked the reason, the agency said the customer stated, moving personal items to new storage. This discovery drew special attention to Michael Hanley. Up to that point, he was seen as the reporter, fully cooperative, no prior record. However, the match between the witness-described vehicle and the one he rented could not be ignored. Whitlock ordered re-examination of Hanley's prior statements, cross-referencing the time he said he was home with the rental period. The summary report showed a gap of over 2 hours between leaving his company and calling to report his wife missing. Though not yet enough legal basis to consider him a suspect, per procedure, Michael Hanley's name was added to the internal watch list. In the following days, police continued collecting statements from residents along the road leading out of the forest. A young man working at a nearby gas station said that evening he saw a white van stop for gas, with 2 men inside, both seeming hurried. He couldn't recall faces clearly, but said the van had a scratch on the left rear door. This information was added to the report, along with images of the Ford Econoline from the rental agency for comparison. Lieutenant Whitlock concluded the first summary of expanded investigation results with key points. Witnesses confirming a white van near the scene. Verification of a matching vehicle rented by the victim's husband, and unclear movement timeline of the reporter. The case file was updated to under investigation, suspicion, involving close associate of victim. Collected evidence continued to be cross-referenced and stored in the temporary evidence catalog, awaiting in-depth analysis. After verifying the van information, Lieutenant Harold Whitlock directed an official invitation for Michael Hanley to the police station for interrogation. The session took place that afternoon in the second-floor interview room at Charlotte-Mecklenburg headquarters. Hanley arrived on time, dressed neatly in a gray suit, calm demeanor. He said he was ready to cooperate to help police find leads on his wife's disappearance. Starting the interrogation, Whitlock asked him to detail his schedule the day Charlotte vanished. Hanley stated he worked at his rehab center from morning to early afternoon, then went home, ate dinner alone, and stayed home all evening. He said his wife often came home late after school meetings, so he didn't find it unusual until after 9. Then he started calling and drove around Dilworth to check. When asked about renting the Ford Econoline van, Hanley confirmed he did, but said it was only to transport documents and old furniture from the facility to storage, completely unrelated to the disappearance. He emphasized the van was returned in full and the rental contract completed before Charlotte vanished. Answers were recorded meticulously, but Whitlock noticed Hanley responded very skillfully, always calm and avoiding specific time details. After the session, Whitlock requested the team verify statements by rechecking time logs at the rehab center. The report sent the next day showed Hanley left work nearly 2 hours earlier than usual, no reason noted. An employee said he saw him drive out of the parking lot late afternoon, carrying a briefcase and wearing a light coat. This information was added to the case file as an inconsistency in statements. Meanwhile, the financial investigation team reviewed Hanley's personal accounts. In the week of the disappearance, he withdrew cash multiple times, totaling about $10,000, no explanatory receipts. Bank records showed these were outside his usual transaction patterns. The rehab center Hanley ran was also requested to provide accounting reports to check for any off-book expenses around that time. Alongside financial checks, police investigated the couple's relationship. Through interviews with Charlotte's friends and colleagues, they learned the Hanley marriage was no longer smooth. A school teacher said Charlotte seemed stressed when mentioning her husband, and in recent months, she intended to file for separation. A close friend revealed Charlotte had said Michael was very controlling, often asking where she went, when she'd return, and unhappy when she spent much time at school. This information focused the team more on possible domestic conflict related to the disappearance. Whitlock requested scrutiny of phone records between the two in the prior week. Data from the telecom company showed many short calls between their numbers, including 2 abruptly ended in the evening before the disappearance. Though content couldn't be determined, the unusual call frequency was noted. By week's end, Whitlock compiled all results and presented to command. Michael Hanley was in the area at the time, rented a vehicle matching witness descriptions, left work early, and showed financial irregularities. Still, Whitlock and colleagues faced difficulties advancing the case. Per legal rules, to obtain a search warrant for Hanley's home or business, they needed specific evidence of crime, such as physical traces or direct witnesses seeing Charlotte forced. No body or related items found kept the file at suspicion, insufficient for expanded pursuit. Whitlock sent a summary report to command, stating, "Much circumstantial evidence, but no physical proof of criminal act. Cannot obtain search warrant at this stage." He requested continued monitoring of Hanley's activities and maintaining contact with potential new informants. At the same time, scene samples were still under analysis at the crime lab, but preliminary results showed nothing unusual beyond initial notes. Ending the second week since Charlotte's disappearance, the case was officially classified as lacking physical evidence, with investigation focus on the husband's identity, motive, and behavior. Police kept the file open, awaiting test results and more witnesses, while local public attention grew to the mysterious disappearance of the young woman in the small Charlotte community. When the initial lab test results yielded no breakthrough, Lieutenant Harold Whitlock decided to shift focus to a larger-scale search operation. At his request, county rescue forces were mobilized to expand the sweep beyond the forest where the car was found, concentrating along the Catawba River, a vast area with many trails and low banks connecting the southern Charlotte suburbs. Police believed that if Charlotte was taken from the scene, the perpetrator might have moved in this direction to avoid populated areas. On the first day of the expanded campaign, over 40 people participated, including police officers, volunteer rescue teams, and a few rangers familiar with the terrain. They divided into multiple groups, carrying maps and radios, marking search areas with reflective paint on tree trunks. The early October weather was dry, the river level low, exposing wide mudflats, facilitating the sweep. From early morning to afternoon, each area was thoroughly checked: open lots, rock crevices, abandoned wooden bridges, and riverbank sections accessible by vehicle. By the third day, a search team downstream reported finding a large sack, partially buried in mud, lying at the water's edge, about 8 miles from the forest. When pulled up, the sack was heavy, damp, and emitted a foul odor. Preliminary inspection showed many dried dark red stains on the surface. Not far away, a thick synthetic rope was caught on a branch, one end stained with dark mud. All evidence was collected, carefully sealed, and sent to the police crime lab. In the following days, the search team expanded another 10 miles along the river, but found no further notable objects. Preliminary lab analysis confirmed the red stains on the sack were human blood, type O+, matching the blood type in Charlotte Hanley's medical records. However, due to 1974 technical limitations, DNA testing was not possible, so the exact identity of the blood source could not be confirmed. Testing on the rope also showed the same blood type, with synthetic fabric fibers attached. Experts concluded the sack might have been used to transport heavy objects, but could not determine the exact time due to prolonged water immersion. The forensic report was sent to the investigation office. Lieutenant Whitlock read every line carefully, knowing this was the most significant lead since the case began, but still insufficient to shift the file to criminal investigation. He noted in the log, samples contain biological traces matching victim's blood type, but lack origin confirmation. Recommend continued search in adjacent areas. For the next 2 weeks, search activities were maintained daily. Rescue teams used motorboats to scan the riverbed, while shore groups checked potential concealment areas. A few nylon bags, fabric scraps, and rusted items were found but unrelated to the case. Along the dirt roads into the forest, police set up temporary checkpoints to prevent public and media access. Local press had begun covering the mysterious disappearance of teacher Charlotte Hanley, drawing public attention. Pressure on investigators grew, but efforts still yielded no definitive results. Brief station meetings ended with similar reports: victim not found. No new witnesses identified. No suspicious vehicles detected. By month's end, Whitlock was forced to scale back the search, partly due to depleted resources, partly because the Catawba River area was too vast for comprehensive sweeping. He sealed the sack, rope, and mud samples with blood into the evidence locker, awaiting deeper analysis. In the final summary report for this phase, he wrote, "Evidence with related signs found, but no body. Insufficient legal basis to confirm crime occurred. Search suspended." After nearly 3 weeks of continuous mobilization, rescue forces withdrew from the area. Temporary signs reading "Investigation Area, no unauthorized entry" were removed. Under the weak late autumn afternoon sun, the Catawba River returned to silence, leaving only patchy mudflats and wooden stakes marking old search positions. Charlotte Hanley's disappearance, despite citywide attention, still had no clear answer, and the investigation file was temporarily closed due to lack of conclusive evidence. After the Catawba River search ended without new discoveries, Lieutenant Harold Whitlock submitted a comprehensive report to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department for guidance. The report, over 20 pages, detailed swept areas, collected evidence, and test results. His final conclusion stated, "Victim's location undetermined, no direct witnesses, insufficient physical evidence to confirm criminal act. Biological samples from the scene and riverbank only confirmed blood type matching Charlotte Hanley. But 1974 technology allowed no deeper analysis. All investigation paths looped back to the starting point. Michael Hanley, the husband, remained on the suspect list, but lack of a body and specific evidence prevented the prosecutor's office from approving an arrest warrant. The internal station meeting was heavy. Some investigators argued the case should be shelved to avoid further resource drain, while others proposed continued suspect monitoring. Ultimately, the administrative decision was made. The Charlotte Hanley file was classified missing, presumed dead. Case number 74H was assigned per department archiving convention. Evidence including the sack, rope, soil, and blood samples was sealed and transferred to the city's evidence storage on North Graham Street. Whitlock's report ended briefly, no progress. Investigation suspended until new evidence emerges. The Hanley family was officially notified of the file closure. Per procedure, the case could only reopen with new witnesses or victim identity confirmation. For the public, the young teacher's disappearance story faded after a few months. Media stopped coverage. Volunteers disbanded, and the last Forest SEAL tape was removed. Lieutenant Whitlock, the lead, moved to other duties. Charlotte Hanley's name remained on the statewide missing persons list, but was no longer mentioned in operational meetings. File 74H entered the department's long-term storage system, placed in a numbered cardboard box with hundreds of other unsolved cases. Per regulation, it was inventoried annually, then returned to its spot. No one expected that after the closed stamp on the cover, the case would lie silent for decades. Initial investigators gradually retired, memories of Charlotte Hanley reduced to faint lines in old reports, and a black and white photo clipped in a yellowed file, deep in the cold Charlotte-Mecklenburg police storage. Nearly 40 years after Charlotte Hanley's disappearance was archived as closed, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg police evidence storage had become overcrowded. In 2012, an internal reform program was launched to digitize all old case files, easing data access and eliminating deteriorating paper files. The task was assigned to a team of young investigators in the newly formed Cold Case Unit, specializing in unsolved cases. Among them, 32-year-old investigator Sarah Collins stood out for her meticulous note-taking and particular interest in forgotten cases. She and colleagues worked weeks in the basement storage room, where hundreds of cardboard boxes were stacked by year. Amid faded boxes, a cardboard one labeled Case 74H, Hanley Charlotte, caught her eye. The seal was intact, old brown paper tape untorn. Sarah noted the code, then opened the file for procedural review. Inside was a thick stack of documents, including scene reports, photos, and sealed nylon bag samples now discolored. Lieutenant Harold Whitlock's handwritten line was still clear. Missing, presumed dead. No further action. She read each page: car examination report, witness statements, river evidence inventory. In the evidence catalog, Sarah noted a key detail: the log mentioned blood, hair, and fabric samples, origin untested. She paused, rechecking the evidence bags. All were carefully sealed, no signs of opening or post-storage analysis. From experience, she knew DNA analysis didn't exist in the 1970s. Such biological evidence was often overlooked after blood typing. This thought drew her attention. She noted in her work log, File 74H, intact samples possible. Consider DNA retesting. After morning inventory, Sarah sat alone in storage, flipping through old black and white photos. Images of the Plymouth satellite, tilted in mud, yellow tape between trees, chalk numbers on the road gave her chills. Despite years past, Charlotte Hanley's disappearance left a big question: no body, no perpetrator, no explanation. In her weekly inventory report to the cold case leader, Sarah added a short paragraph requesting evidence re-examination. The next day, she received verbal approval. If evidence is intact, proceed with new DNA protocol. Document all steps. Collins contacted the North Carolina State Forensics Lab about analyzing old samples. Experts confirmed that if blood and hair were properly preserved, DNA could still be extracted decades later using modern separation technology. This fueled her determination. 3 days later, Sarah and a storage technician drafted an unsealing log. All actions were filmed: cutting tape, checking each bag, noting evidence condition. Inside were 5 bags, one with soil, one with synthetic rope segment, one small with hair and fabric, and 2 with mud traces mixed with dried blood. Bags were numbered, placed in a specialized transport box, and sent to the state crime lab via secure channel. In the accompanying report, Sarah specified full DNA analysis of biological samples, identify or link samples, prioritize match with victim Charlotte Hanley's profile. Leaving storage that day, Collins looked at the dusty high shelves. Hundreds of boxes like 74H lay silent, awaiting review. She knew modern forensics could answer many forgotten cases, but for Charlotte Hanley, a nearly 40-year disappearance, the old evidence in her hands was the last chance to know what really happened in fall 1974. About 6 weeks after sending samples for testing, Sarah Collins received notification from the North Carolina State Forensics Lab. The over 30-page report was stamped confidential, sent internally to the cold case unit. She opened the envelope in her small office, lit only by computer screen and tall file stacks. On the first page, analysis results stated, hair sample belonged to victim Charlotte Hanley, confirmed by comparison with living relatives' DNA profiles. The second part made her pause longer. Remaining blood in the sack and on the rope did not match the victim, but belonged to Michael Hanley, Charlotte's husband. Results were verified via National CODIS database, storing citizen medical DNA samples. Match probability 99.8%. The forensic report also noted, second blood sample from evidence originates from the same male. Biological link between samples proves their simultaneous presence at the same location. Collins read every line, then noted in her notebook, DNA results match victim's husband. First direct evidence after nearly 40 years. She backed up the digital copy, printed 2 extras for superiors. In a brief cold case team meeting the next morning, Collins presented the full testing process from discovering the intact sealed box, sending samples, to results. Colleagues listened silently. When she projected the DNA comparison results, no one spoke for a while. Finally, the team leader concluded, "This is authenticated biological evidence. We have grounds to request case reopening." The meeting minutes were immediately sent to the North Carolina State Prosecutor's Office. In the attached report, Sarah Collins highlighted 2 key points. First, 1974 scene samples directly linked victim and husband. Second, no signs of tampering or cross-contamination. All evidence bags were properly preserved, seals unbroken. 3 days later, the prosecutor's office responded, requesting full original file copies and test results for reinvestigation review. The state also requested Michael Hanley's post-1974 personal and travel records. The cold case unit officially coordinated with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police for procedures. On September 17, 2012, a document signed by the deputy state prosecutor confirmed Case 74H reopened and transferred to the North Carolina prosecutor's office as a homicide cold case. For Sarah Collins, this was a major career turning point. She reread the confirmation, feeling the weight of each word. After nearly 40 years, Charlotte Hanley's disappearance, a name sunk in oblivion, was back on the investigation table as a criminal homicide case. That week, she worked with forensics experts to finalize technical files, including gene comparison charts, evidence photos, and seal verification logs. All were sent via official channel to the state prosecutor headquarters in Raleigh. For transparency, she created a detailed process report on preservation, transport, and testing, signed by involved parties. The summary report ended with, DNA results provide direct biological link between victim and husband. Recommend state-level criminal investigation against suspect Michael Hanley. With all documents complete, Collins sat a moment in her office, looking at the enlarged black and white photo of Charlotte on the caseboard. Nearly 4 decades had passed, initial investigators long out of service, but the truth remained in a few dried blood drops and carefully sealed hair strands. She knew this was not just scientific, but the first legal evidence reopening Case 74H's door, bringing it from storage darkness back into justice's light. After Case File 74H was reopened, the North Carolina State Prosecutor's Office, in coordination with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, conducted a full review of all information related to Michael Hanley. Administrative records showed he had left Charlotte in the late 1970s, settling in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he opened a private rehab center and lived relatively quietly. Based on DNA test results proving a direct link between him and the case evidence, the state prosecutor obtained a search warrant for Hanley's residence and business to seek additional evidence. The search was conducted on the morning of March 12, 2013, with participation from the FBI New Orleans Field Office Special Investigation Team and the Baton Rouge Police Department. Law enforcement surrounded Hanley's 2-story home in a quiet southern neighborhood of the city, simultaneously notifying him of the North Carolina court-issued search warrant. Hanley remained calm, stating he was ready to cooperate and that everything in the house is transparent. The search began in the ground floor personal office. The room was neatly arranged, with a computer, bookshelf, and multiple file cabinets on the desk. Investigators checked every drawer, photographing each document before sealing it. In a locked old wooden cabinet, they discovered a metal Super 8 film canister, labeled faintly on the outside. 1974, MISC. Next to the canister was a leather-bound notebook and an old rope coil, its fibers discolored yellowish-brown. All items were logged, assigned evidence numbers, and handed to the crime scene technical team for processing. In the basement, officers found a cardboard box labeled personal storage containing various old items. Inside, besides administrative papers, was a small flat tin box, surface rusted, lid sealed with tape. Upon opening, technicians discovered a dark brown stain adhered to the bottom. The sample was taken with a sterile swab, sealed on-site, and sent to the local lab. Meanwhile, a quick review of the notebook revealed scattered entries about work schedules, personal notes, and short, unclear sentences. Some pages had ink smudges, especially in the middle, where brief lines read, "Start over, must keep secret, and no one must see." These lines were highlighted in red in the scene report. After nearly 5 hours, the search concluded. A total of 14 evidence items were seized, including the Super 8 film, notebook, rope, tin box, and several financial documents. All were packaged per federal evidence protocol and transferred to FBI headquarters in New Orleans for preliminary analysis. Results from the biological sample on the tin box were returned just 3 days later. The report confirmed the dried blood in the box matched Charlotte Hanley's DNA exactly, establishing direct evidence linking an item in Hanley's home to the victim from 40 years prior. In the remarks section, the forensic expert noted, blood sample preserved in a sealed environment, likely intentional storage, not accidental adhesion to the item. This result was immediately forwarded to the Charlotte investigation team. Sarah Collins received the notification via internal system that weekend. She read the report with a mix of astonishment and caution. Items that seemed worthless, a rope coil, tin box, and Super 8 film were now keys connecting the suspect to the crime scene. The next morning, the FBI completed procedures to transfer all evidence seized in Louisiana to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Investigation Agency under the jurisdiction of the state where the crime occurred. Each item was individually sealed, labeled with case code 74H, stored in specialized preservation containers, and transported by air. Copies of the search log, scene photos, and DNA certification were included in the transfer file. When the evidence containers arrived at the cold case unit's investigation room, Collins observed the technical team rechecking each seal. On the Super 8 film canister lid, the handwritten 1974 MISC was nearly faded, but still legible. Beside it, the neatly coiled rope, fibers hardened with time, and the old notebook still carrying its distinctive leather smell. All these, seemingly harmless keepsakes, now carried entirely different meaning. She signed the receipt log, ending with a firm stroke. Evidence seized at suspect Michael Hanley's residence has been inspected, authenticated, and transferred to Charlotte-Mecklenburg Investigation Room for in-depth analysis. Restoration of the Super 8 film was assigned to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Crime Scene Technical Unit in coordination with the FBI Motion Picture Restoration Division. The film, approximately 8 minutes long, was in better condition than expected. The surface had light scratches, but no mold or tears. In a small projection room, experts loaded the reel into a specialized digital scanner to convert each frame into high-resolution data. They worked meticulously, processing segments, adjusting light, and reducing noise. When the first image appeared clearly, the entire group fell silent. The opening scene showed a wide-open lot, dim light, likely late afternoon. The frame was slightly tilted, shaking as if held by an amateur cameraman. In the distance, a white van was visible parked at the forest edge, matching the 1974 witness-described vehicle, a Ford Econoline. The van had no markings or identifying signs. Seconds later, the image shifted closer. A man in a dark shirt, tall build, pulling a large sack from the ground to the van's rear door. Another man inside the cargo area received the sack and arranged it. Dim light made initial identification difficult, but when processed with enhancement software, the face of the man on the outside became sharp. It was Michael Hanley, around age 30, build and features matching file photos exactly. He did not look directly at the lens, but facial shape, hair, and gait were unmistakable. Technicians continued to the next segment, the second man younger, wearing a baseball cap, moving around the van, checking the rear door. When zooming in, they noticed a small tattoo on his right wrist, a simple cross symbol. This mark matched old employment records of one Sylvester Bracey, who briefly worked for Michael Hanley at the Charlotte Rehab Center before 1974. At the third minute, a third man appeared in frame, shorter, curly hair, wearing a thick jacket. He held something like a flashlight or metal pipe, scanning the lot, then turned to say something to Hanley. No audio was recorded, but hand gestures indicated signaling. When technicians paused and clarified the frame, they identified the face matching the ID photo of Arsenio Haynes, another temporary employee of Hanley that year. In the image annotation, technicians noted frame 314, 3 individuals, Hanley, Bracey, Haynes, transporting unidentified sack. The next scene forced the group to play frame by frame. As Bracey pulled the second sack to the rear door, the sack mouth briefly opened, revealing a woman's hand dangling out, pale skin, fingers naturally curled without response. The image lasted less than half a second before the frame shook violently and shifted to the ground. A technician paused, enlarged the segment tenfold, adjusted light. No mistake, nails painted light color, small wrist, female characteristics. The technical report noted, frame 327, female hand, no movement, appearing in sack being loaded into vehicle cargo. From that moment, the entire film content was scrutinized further. Subsequent minutes recorded the van moving slowly on a dirt road, lens aimed out the rear, showing sparse forest, damp ground, and low afternoon light. In another frame, in the far background, a wide water body reflected sunset glow, a section of the Catawba River. Terrain analysis confirmed the scenery and light direction perfectly matched the area where the sack and rope were found in 1974. The crime scene technical team report stated, film images shot at Catawba Riverside area, approximately 8 miles from victim's vehicle discovery site, in late day time frame. When pieced together, the 7-minute 48-second footage clearly depicted 3 men moving sacks from the forest edge to the van, checking the rear door, then leaving the area. No scene showed the victim alive or leaving the location. Some frames were interrupted, but technicians successfully restored over 90% of content. In the technical conclusion, the restoration team noted, setting, light, and terrain confirm filming near Catawba River, southwest Charlotte. Primary subject matches Michael Hanley's identifying features. Accompanying individuals are Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes. Cross-referencing personnel data, investigators discovered both men died in 1975 in a recorded watercraft accident in Louisiana. The same time, Michael Hanley left Charlotte to settle there. Local archives confirmed Bracey and Haynes were temporary employees at Hanley's rehab facility before Charlotte's disappearance. Identifying them reinforced the film's value. Of the 3 figures, the 2 assistants were deceased, leaving only Michael Hanley alive. The Super 8 film, after digitization, was extracted into individual frames stored in the electronic file, and 3 backup copies. Each key frame was time-stamped and described in detail: vehicle position, light direction, individual actions. The over 80-page comprehensive report was sent to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Criminal Investigation Room with a brief conclusion on the final page. Super 8 film is high legal value visual evidence showing Michael Hanley's presence at the Catawba River area during the time frame corresponding to victim Charlotte Hanley's disappearance. Images confirmed authentic, no signs of splicing or alteration. After the Super 8 film was restored and its filming location confirmed along the Catawba River area, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department coordinated with the North Carolina State Forensics Lab to plan a site survey. A forensic archaeology team was dispatched from Raleigh, bringing surveying equipment, ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and precision excavation tools. They focused on the area deemed matching the footage, situated between 2 sparse forests, less than 300 meters from the riverbank. This was a rarely traversed zone, mostly covered by wild vegetation and thick leaf litter. Using old topographic maps and the film's light angles, the team pinpointed a suspected location spanning only a few dozen square meters, near a large oak tree with a distinctive curved trunk. The survey began in early May 2013. Experts used GPR to detect soil structure anomalies. By the second day, a signal from a point 40 meters from the riverbank indicated disturbed soil, likely dug and refilled. The area was quickly cordoned with marking tape, labeled position. A 1. The excavation team began removing surface soil inch by inch. The dark brown topsoil was nearly half a meter thick. Beneath it emerged lighter clay, evidence of mechanical intervention. Digging deeper, about 1.5 meters, technicians uncovered dark fabric scraps and a small bone fragment protruding at the pit's edge. Activity halted immediately for filming and logging. After expanding the surrounding area, a complete female skeleton gradually emerged, lying on its side, arms folded across the chest, covered by compacted soil. The jawbone was intact, and a small partially rusted metal necklace remained around the neck. When lightly brushed clean, faint engraved letters appeared, CH. The group stood silent for several seconds, fully aware they had just found what had eluded everyone 39 years earlier. After completing documentation, surrounding soil was sampled, and the remains were removed per forensic protocol. The skeleton was placed in a specialized wooden box and transferred to the Central Charlotte Examination Facility under state prosecutor supervision. Analysis took nearly 2 weeks. Forensic pathologists began by reconstructing the skeleton, determining sex, age, and height. Results showed a female, approximately 25, 30 years old, estimated height 5'5", matching Charlotte Hanley's description. The skull exhibited a fracture on the left temple from blunt force trauma. No injuries to arms or legs, indicating the victim was likely attacked suddenly, without time to resist. The cervical vertebrae showed cracking, suggesting possible strangulation after the blow. Soil samples around the body were collected for comparison with 1974 sack mud samples. Mineral composition and clay ratio matched, confirming the same geological source. The forensics lab also conducted DNA analysis from bone marrow and teeth. Samples were sent to the federal lab in Quantico for comparison with previously stored relatives' DNA of Charlotte Hanley. 3 weeks later, results returned. DNA matched Charlotte Hanley's profile, exactly, identification probability 99.99%. The official report confirmed the excavated remains from the Catawba River area were the 1974 missing victim. The forensic conclusion also determined time of death, aligned with her disappearance period, meaning Charlotte died the night she left the elementary school. Environmental analysis around the remains showed the soil was dug and refilled shortly after, indicating intentional concealment. No animal disturbance or erosion, meaning the location was carefully chosen in a low-impact area. Accompanying evidence included the TH engraved necklace, 2 metal buttons, and gray synthetic fabric scraps, all collected and sealed for comparison with 1974 vehicle scene fibers. The comprehensive autopsy report was sent to the North Carolina state prosecutor with a concise conclusion. Victim Charlotte Hanley died from head trauma and strangulation. Time of death matches disappearance date recorded in File 74H. Body secretly buried in Catawba Riverside area. In an internal meeting, Sarah Collins read the conclusion aloud to the cold case team. Everyone fell silent for several seconds. Nearly 40 years after Charlotte vanished, her body had finally been found. The visual, geographic, and forensic data now closed the case's unfinished circle, proving that old clues, if preserved intact and properly stored, could still tell the full truth. On June 18, 2013, after forensic results confirmed the Catawba Riverside remains were Charlotte Hanley, a federal arrest warrant for Michael Hanley was issued by the North Carolina Federal Court. The FBI, coordinating with Baton Rouge Police, executed the arrest at his 2-story residence. The arrest proceeded quietly, with no resistance. Hanley was handcuffed and read his Miranda rights on site, witnessed by neighbors and the state prosecutor representative. He remained calm, asking only one question, for something from 74. When taken to FBI headquarters in New Orleans for interrogation, Hanley initially waived counsel, stating he wanted to explain directly to clear up any misunderstandings. The interrogation was continuously recorded and backed up as evidence. At the start, the lead agent presented Hanley with the evidence list. The Super 8 film, personal notebook, tin box containing blood matching the victim's DNA, and rope found in his home. When asked about the film, Hanley said, "It was just old footage shot on vacant land his company once rented for storage, and insisted the people in the film were just cleaning out discarded items." He completely denied murder, saying Charlotte left, and I had a few people help pack her things. When shown the image of the woman's hand in the sack at frame 327, Hanley looked down, silent for nearly a minute, then replied, "I don't know what they did after I left." When asked who they were, he said 2 temporary workers, whose names he didn't remember. This contradicted evidence, as both men in the film were identified as Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes, former employees of his. When questioned why the film was in his home, Hanley said, "I kept it because it was old property, then shifted to being slandered." Investigators demanded explanation for the victim's blood in the basement tin box, but Hanley denied, "I never saw that box. Someone could have put it there later." When reminded the tin was in his personal storage, Hanley responded, "I have hundreds of old items, I don't remember them all. If there's blood, it must be from some accident." Responses repeated, extending the interrogation over 8 hours. Throughout, Hanley continually shifted statements, initially claiming not to know the two men in the film, then admitting hiring them briefly, finally insisting no involvement in what they did. When presented with DNA results confirming his blood in the sack with victim traces, Hanley paused long, then said, "I might have gotten hurt lifting things bled onto it." Later, when asked why hide the injury, he replied, "Minor thing, I forgot." These inconsistencies were noted and flagged in the log. By day's end, when shown the photo of the engraved necklace found with the remains, Hanley stared at it, then said softly, "She always wore it, even to sleep." The statement silenced the room for several seconds. The agent noted immediately, mild emotional response, acknowledges victim's possession. However, Hanley maintained he did not kill her. He said, "I loved her. I would never do that. Maybe someone else wanted to hurt me." When asked about Bracey and Haynes, both dead since 1975, he only said, "I had nothing to do with their deaths. They brought it on themselves." Most of his statements conflicted with facts, from van rental timing, presence at the Catawba area, to home evidence. All statements were audio recorded and stored under Code Evidence Tape 74, HR01. The interrogation ended at midnight. When the agent reread arrestee rights, Hanley said briefly, "I need a lawyer." He was taken to federal temporary detention in Baton Rouge, awaiting extradition to North Carolina. The FBI's final report concluded, suspect Michael Hanley denies murder, but cannot reasonably explain physical, biological, and visual evidence. Statements changed multiple times, contained self-contradictions, entire interrogation recorded and sealed, as evidence in Case File 74H. After Michael Hanley's arrest and interrogation, the Charlotte investigation team focused on strengthening the evidence chain to prepare the prosecution file. Items seized from his home, the leather-bound notebook, financial documents, and old invoices were transferred to the FBI analysis lab for examination. The first report on the notebook yielded clear results. The handwriting in the notebook exactly matched Hanley's on contracts and company records he signed in the 1970s. The handwriting expert described features like slant, character spacing, and the style of the number 4 as unique and consistent across both samples. Several notebook lines were flagged as legally significant, must keep secret, 25 BR plus, 25A, and no one must know, complete, before next week. Investigators interpreted these abbreviations as referring to the two men in the Super 8 film, Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes, confirmed as Hanley's former employees. The report concluded the notebook was direct evidence of planning and connection between Hanley and the two individuals just before the crime. Next, the state financial investigation team reviewed Hanley's old bank records. Due to the age, most data existed only on microfilm in local bank archives. After over 2 weeks of searching, they uncovered a series of cash transactions from September 17 to 20, 1974, just days before Charlotte's disappearance. In total, Hanley withdrew $25,000, split into 2 separate transactions at the same branch. Notably, a handwritten banknote listed recipients in the internal payout slip, S. Bracey and A. Haynes, with the remark payment for personal transport services. This was the only entry in the ledger without an attached invoice and the largest cash withdrawal Hanley made that year. The Financial Investigation Unit immediately cross-referenced this with employment data from Hanley's rehab center. Results showed both Bracey and Haynes ceased working there the week Charlotte vanished. In records, their departure reason was completion of short-term contract. This evidence established a direct financial link between Hanley and the two men in the Super 8 film. A third report, conducted concurrently, focused on purchase receipts from Hanley's old document box. The papers were from a Baton Rouge private security supply store named Barney's Police Depot. The invoice, dated September 18, 1974, listed 2 sets handcuffs, 4 burlap sacks, 2 flashlight heavy-duty, 1 roll nylon rope. All items matched samples seized from Hanley's home and the 1974 scene. Notably, the rope in his basement had identical fiber structure and diameter to the invoiced product. The forensic technical lab used microscopic comparison, determining the scene rope and home rope, woven from the same material, likely produced in the same batch. The comprehensive report concluded, evidence, invoice, and fiber samples uniform in technical characteristics, proving common origin. Concurrently, the investigation team reviewed Hanley's rental history. Archived records from the Charlotte rental agency confirmed he rented a white Ford Econoline 3 days before the disappearance, with the rental period extending past the missing person report. Data cross-referenced with the Super 8 film showed the vehicle in the footage exactly matched the rented van. All these facts were compiled in a report over 120 pages, describing links between physical, financial, and biological evidence types. In the conclusion, the team wrote, "Collected elements form a closed evidence chain, clearly showing connection between Michael Hanley, individuals Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes, and victim Charlotte Hanley. Physical, financial, and biological evidence mutually support, eliminating random coincidence." The report also noted no evidence of third-party involvement beyond the 3 in the film. Investigators described the file as a seamless logical chain from the 1974 scene to the 2013 body discovery. Upon completion, Sarah Collins submitted it to the state prosecutor's office. In the attached note, she wrote, "Evidence has reached legal certainty. Case 74H now has full 3 pillars: physical, financial, biological. Conclusion: crime planned and directly executed by Michael Hanley." The file was sealed in a red hardcover labeled Full Evidence File, Case 74H. The documents, numbers, and old evidence, after nearly 4 decades, now connected into a complete picture, mapping the entire path of the crime, from motive, method, to the perpetrator's traces. The trial of Michael Hanley opened at the North Carolina Federal Court in Charlotte in November 2013, nearly 40 years after Case 74H was first recorded. The courtroom was packed, with the state prosecutor representative, defense counsel, investigators from the case, and reporters from major newspapers. The atmosphere was tense from the opening minutes. The case was seen as one of the longest cold cases ever tried in the state. Michael Hanley, then 71, appeared in a dark suit, short silver hair, slow gait, but sharp eyes. He sat at the defense table, occasionally taking notes, occasionally observing the prosecution area calmly. In the opening, lead prosecutor Mark Ellison outlined the entire investigation process: Charlotte Hanley's 1974 disappearance, failed searches, decades-long file closure, and reopening via modern DNA technology. He emphasized that all physical, financial, and biological evidence formed an undeniable seamless chain, proving Michael Hanley planned, hired help, and directly participated in his wife's murder. After the summary, the prosecution called its first witness, Investigator Sarah Collins, who discovered and restarted the file. Collins detailed the process of finding the sealed evidence box, sending samples for testing, and DNA comparison results. In court, she confirmed the blood in the sack and rope bore Michael Hanley's DNA traces, while the hair matched Charlotte Hanley exactly. The prosecution presented large print DNA comparison charts, showing match probability up to 99.8%. When asked her assessment of the results, Collins replied firmly, "This is the first direct biological evidence in this case. It shows the victim and suspect were present at the scene simultaneously. The second witness was the forensic expert responsible for examining the Super 8 film. He described the frame-by-frame restoration process and pointed out that the film showed 3 men, including Michael Hanley and his 2 employees, Sylvester Bracey and Arsenio Haynes. When the prosecution played a 30-second clip on the large screen, the courtroom fell completely silent. The white van appeared, and in an enlarged frame, a woman's hand dangled from the sack's opening. The prosecutor pointed at the defendant and said, "Mr. Hanley, that's you in the film, isn't it?" The defense attorney immediately objected, but the judge allowed the witness to continue. The expert confirmed no signs of splicing or image alteration. Next, the prosecution presented the financial document chain. A financial investigator displayed microfilm bank copies proving Hanley withdrew $25,000 in cash and transferred it to 2 people, Bracey and Haynes, just before his wife's disappearance. The Barney's Police Depot invoice copy was also introduced, listing Hanley's purchase of handcuffs, burlap sacks, and rope. All matched the seized evidence. Simultaneously, the handwriting expert presented comparison results from the leather-bound notebook. The lines 25, bruh plus 25, and complete. Before next week, exactly matched Hanley's signature. The prosecution connected all data into a chain: motive, opportunity, and action. Each piece of evidence was projected, cross-referenced, and systematized in charts. When the presentation ended, Ellison told the jury, "There is no room for coincidence. For 39 years, these items have preserved their story, and they all point to one man." The defense's turn focused on questioning evidence integrity. They argued the blood samples could be contaminated due to storage errors, that the Super 8 film had no confirmed date and only showed men cleaning out items. Regarding the $25,000, they claimed it was legitimate labor payment. However, when the prosecution cross-examined, why did Mr. Hanley keep this film for nearly 40 years if it was just cleaning footage? The attorney offered no satisfactory answer. The jury heard the full FBI interrogation recording of Hanley, where he repeatedly changed his statements. Several segments were replayed, including, "I don't know what they did after I left, and if there's blood, it must be from some accident." The prosecution emphasized that these contradictions demonstrated deceit and intent to conceal. When allowed to speak, Hanley stood, saying slowly he was innocent, that it was all a misunderstanding, and that my wife left because of me. His voice was low but slightly trembling. On the 8th day of trial, the prosecution called the final witness, the forensic pathologist confirming Charlotte's cause of death as head trauma and strangulation, consistent with the filmed actions. She also presented that soil around the body matched 1974 sack mud samples, completing the link between scene, evidence, and remains. The autopsy report was deemed the final link in the closed evidence chain. When both sides rested, the judge instructed the 12-person jury to retire for deliberations. Discussions lasted 9 continuous hours. The next morning, they returned with the verdict. The 4-person stood and read aloud, "The jury finds defendant Michael Hanley guilty of second-degree murder." A small murmur spread through the room. Hanley showed no reaction, staring straight ahead. The judge declared, "Sentence of the North Carolina Federal Court, 35 years imprisonment, term to run from date of detention." In sentencing remarks, the judge emphasized the case as proof of investigative persistence and the power of modern forensic science. He thanked the cold case team for reviving the file and recognized the efforts of all involved over 40 years. Police, prosecutors, and forensic staff were present, silent as the sentence was read. As Hanley was escorted out, he glanced back at the gallery once, expression unreadable. In the public seats, several older Charlotte residents, who followed the 1974 disappearance, sat quietly. The 35-year sentence was seen as closing one of the oldest cases in state judicial history. The court issued the final order. Michael Hanley, convicted of second-degree murder, premeditated act with intentional concealment. Sentenced to be served at Federal Correctional Institution, Butner, North Carolina. As the judge gavels the conclusion, the clock read exactly 4:20 p.m., marking the end of the nearly 2-week trial and the moment justice finally reached Charlotte Hanley, the woman forgotten for nearly 4 decades. After Michael Hanley's sentence was announced, local and national media widely covered the case. The next day, the Charlotte Observer, Raleigh News and Record, and the New York Times all ran front-page stories headlined, "1974 Charlotte Case Closed After 39 Years, Justice Served Via DNA and Old Film." At Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Headquarters, the chief held a brief press conference, declaring Case 74 Heat, the longest cold case successfully solved in city history. He praised the new generation of investigators, especially Sarah Collins, who discovered and revived the archived file. The nearly 4-decade journey of the case quickly spread across North Carolina, becoming a symbol of perseverance and modern forensic science. However, alongside pride, authorities faced tough questions. Why was a case with many suspicious signs closed so early in 1975? Why were evidence items, including blood and hair, not more thoroughly tested despite a clear suspect? Under public pressure, Charlotte Mecklenburg Police launched an internal review of 1970s investigation procedures and administrative decisions. An independent committee of retired investigators, prosecutors, and legal experts was formed to examine original files. The committee's report, released in late 2014, found most errors stemmed from 1970s technological limits and inconsistent protocols, not intentional cover-up. Still, it highlighted improper preservation of many samples and lack of cross-unit verification as reasons the case stalled for nearly 40 years. These findings spurred North Carolina to launch a statewide cold case review program, using the 1974 Charlotte case as a model. Funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, the program began in 2015 to digitize, re-examine, and retest all unsolved cases with biological elements. Over 12,000 evidence boxes were unsealed, nearly 3,000 DNA samples reanalyzed. In the first 3 years, at least 27 old cases were solved, including disappearances and murders from the 1960s, 1980s. Media dubbed it the Hanley effect, referring to how modern forensics could awaken cases thought forever dormant. The North Carolina State Forensics Lab also overhauled DNA storage and management protocols. Under 2015 standards, all biological samples, tested or not, must be kept in stable cold conditions, with electronic identifiers and dual traceability to prevent loss. Old samples were barcoded and entered into a central database, enabling instant federal CODIS access. The 2017 report showed an over 40% increase in DNA match rates for unsolved cases compared to prior periods. Charlotte, once home to a case forgotten for nearly half a century, became a Southeast U.S. pioneer in forensic technology application. For the community, the Charlotte Hanley case left a profound impact. Many Dilworth residents from 1974 expressed mixed regret and relief. Several elderly teachers, Charlotte's former colleagues, attended a city-organized memorial. At the event, a small plaque was placed on Dilworth Elementary grounds, inscribed, "In memory of Charlotte Hanley, 1948-1974. Justice found after 39 years." The ceremony drew large crowds of residents, students, and retired police, becoming a symbol of faith that justice, though delayed, can still prevail. Sarah Collins, who played a central role in reviving the case, was awarded the North Carolina Distinguished Service Medal in early 2014. In her brief speech, she said, "Technology doesn't create justice on its own, but it gives us the chance to listen to evidence that was once silenced." The quote was reprinted in many newspapers, becoming a slogan for training programs for young investigators in the state. Department of Justice's summary report, released at the end of 2016, cited the 1974 Charlotte case as a prime example of combining scientific archiving, DNA technology, and federal-state collaboration. The document was later used as a training model for cold case units in many other states. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department also established the Digital Evidence Data Center, where all old files were digitized and directly linked to forensic labs. When asked about the case's significance, former lead prosecutor Mark Ellison, who served as chief prosecutor at trial, replied on television, "It's not just about convicting one man. This proves that every piece of evidence, no matter how small, if properly preserved, can tell the truth." We no longer live in an era where we must accept the unknown. For Charlotte residents, the name Charlotte Hanley became a collective memory, both tragic and a reminder that justice never vanishes, only awaits its moment to be found. By 2018, 5 years after the trial, the state police released a comprehensive report on the case's impact. It noted over 120 investigators trained in long-term DNA preservation techniques, thousands of files reclassified, and dozens of families receiving answers to old losses. On the report's final page, the summary read, "Charlotte Hanley was not just a victim, she was the starting point for a new chapter in North Carolina criminal justice." At the National Forensics Conference held in Raleigh that year, the 74H investigation team was invited to present a session. Sarah Collins ended her presentation with a simple statement: "Without advances in forensic technology, this case would still be just a few yellowed pages in a dusty box." That remark encapsulated the case's full meaning, a story of persistence, the power of science and justice delayed but complete. As 2019 drew to a close, marking exactly 45 years since the night Charlotte vanished, the city of Charlotte held a small ceremony at the State Justice Memorial. Under warm golden lights, residents, police, prosecutors, and former students of the teacher from long ago stood in silence. Beside the stone plaque, bearing her name was a newly engraved line, Case 74H, closed with truth and science. 39 years, one answer. For professionals, the 1974 Charlotte case is seen as a turning point in modern forensics in North Carolina. It proved that the combination of systematic archiving, DNA analysis technology, and the pursuit of justice can overcome any time barrier. In the state's final report, the conclusion was simple yet weighty. Scientific progress closed a case once thought impossible, and through it, Charlotte Hanley finally rests in peace. The story of Charlotte Hanley, the woman who disappeared in 1974 and was found only after 39 years, thanks to DNA technology, is not just a thrilling criminal case, but a mirror reflecting the reality of today's American society, where justice sometimes arrives late, but never disappears. From Charlotte's journey, Investigator Sarah Collins' efforts, and a legal system matured through mistakes, we clearly see two foundational American values: persistence and faith in scientific progress. Without Collins, the young woman patiently reopening each old file box, and without the blood, hair, and Super 8 film carefully preserved for nearly 4 decades, justice for Charlotte would have been buried forever. This teaches us that small actions often overlooked, like following proper documentation, preserving evidence, or asking questions when something seems off, can save a life in the future. In today's America, where technology advances and information spreads faster than ever, this story reminds us not to lose faith in the legal system and the power of tangible evidence. Every voice, every data point, every sample has value if respected and used correctly. And like Sarah Collins, every citizen can be part of justice through honesty, care, and awareness of protecting truth in daily life. The Charlotte Hanley case is closed, but its lessons on perseverance, professional ethics, and belief in science remain open, not just for police or judges, but for all who believe truth can be delayed, but never forgotten. If you believe justice can be delayed, but never lost, subscribe to the channel to join us in exploring more cases awakened by time. Thank you for following Charlotte Hanley's journey. See you in the next video, where another truth is waiting to be found.